Okay, Carl, thank you very much for joining us once again. We've got three new updates for our audience, which has been following us on the Iran Israel conflict. Iran is buying J10Cs. Iran has switched over from its GPS system. Number three, Iran disassociating itself from the IAEA. Let's go on the J10Cs. What do you have on the J10Cs?
Well, as a result of the 12-day war between Iran and Israel, now Iran's top priority is regroup and rebuild its air defense and air force. For the longest time, the Iranian air force had been in sort of a limbo due to international sanction. In fact, the international arms embargo against Iran wasn't lifted until October 2020. And what Iran was forced to do is it was forced to develop indigenous capabilities. I remember a couple of years ago, an Iranian official was giving an interview to Chinese state media. This official has since been assassinated by Israel in its Israel sneak attack. He said that back before Iran's Islamic Revolution in 1979, Iran had to rely on Western help, Western assistance for its weapon program, particularly from the United States. That's back when Iranian Shah bought F-14 fighters from U.S. F-14 was advanced for its time. However, immediately after Iran hostage crisis, United States cut off the source of military technology for Iran. Iran had to go on its own. So, according to this Iranian defense official, Iran had to develop its indigenous capability. Now, one reason for this is also because Iranians are a very proud people. They see themselves as inheritor of the great Persian Empire, the great Persian civilization. They want to be for them, sovereignty and independence is very important. They didn't want to have to depend on anybody else for their basic defense needs. But what the result of this 12-day conflict is that it forced Iran to come to the realization they will need outside help to rebuild their air force and their air defense. Um, before the conflict broke out, before the conflict broke out, and after the international arms embargo was lifted in 2020, Iran actually approached Russia. Iran had signed several deals to get Russian S-300 and S-400 air defense system, which are modern air defense system, and as well as buying a batch of Su-35 fighter jets. But they haven't been delivered yet. I mean, for whatever reason. I mean, some people say it's because it takes time. It takes time to finalize those military deal. Iranian pilots need to be trained. Iranian ground crew needs to be trained before the weapon system can be handed over. But for whatever reason, those delivery hasn't taken place. Now, um, in the same time, India-Pakistan conflict that just happened, it demonstrated the effectiveness of the Chinese weapon system, particularly Chinese J10C fighters. Now, Iran actually expressed interest in acquiring J10C before. It was reported back in 2021 that Iran was looking to acquire J10C from China, but it was unlikely back then because that was before Pakistan even acquired J10C from China. Iran wasn't going to get its J10C before Pakistan acquired J10C, just for the mere fact that Pakistan and China has a lot more closer defense cooperation and relationship. And now that Pakistan did acquire J10C and you demonstrated its effectiveness in real live battle, I think that bolstered the argument for Iran to acquire the same. And I mentioned this before on your show. J10C is quite cost-effective weapon platform. The unit price is somewhere between $40 to $50 million compared to the Raphael, for example, which costs north of hundreds of $1 million, and that's before accounting for the parts and services. Because India was paying over $288 million per plane in their package deal. They were spending, more than 7.4 billion to acquire, like 28 planes or something like that. And so this is an area where Iran can acquire modern 4.5 generation fighter at a relatively cheap price, and there's also no bottleneck on delivery, because China has what the West quote unquote call overcapacity in manufacturing. So China can very quickly ramp up production, and there's even talk of Iran is looking to acquire existing J10C stocks that's being used by Chinese People's Liberation Army Air Force, because the PLAF is looking to retire some of its J10C fleet for the 5th generation fighter J20. So that way Iran doesn't even have to wait for production for J10C to roll off assembly line. They can just take delivery of the existing stock. And this J10C by itself, what we saw in the Indian-Pakistan aerial battle is that when it comes to a modern warfare, it's not just one piece of hardware versus other piece of hardware. It's really about system integration. You're pitting a system against system. What we saw was Pakistan Air Force was very effective in their system integration with J10C planes, with the Chinese PL-15 missiles, which can go head beyond visual range, and they were able to have data link between their J10C fighter with their AWACS plane, their air warning aircraft systems, that enable those J10C pilot to see beyond their own J10C radar. Because those Pakistani AWACS plane were able to pick out target of the Indian Raphael jets before the Indian Raphael jets could see their Pakistani counterpart. So this is really about a whole system, and this is where Iran is actually taking a quite big step, because not only they're going to purchase J10C planes, they're probably going to have to work with China on integrating the J10Cs into a integrated Air Force air defense system. By that, I mean, you mentioned about Iran booting the GPS for the Chinese BeiDou navigation system. This is quite critical, because the modern warfare, you're going to rely on satellites to provide targeting information. And Iran cannot rely on GPS, because that's American platform. They can off at any time. And this is why Iran actually signed agreement with China back in 2024 to use the China's BeiDou system. And China's BeiDou system is the China's own answer to the GPS. And China developed it, actually was due to an incident involving Iran back in 1993. So back in 1993, a Chinese ship, a container ship called Yinghe, which means Milky Way in Chinese, was sailing toward the Persian Gulf. And then it was intercepted by U.S. Navy, because U.S. claimed that this ship, that China was sending chemical weapons, mustard gas and nerve gas, via that ship to Iran. And U.S. Navy ship surrounded the Chinese container ship and they cut off GPS guidance system to the ship, because at that time everybody had to rely on GPS, including Chinese marine traffic. And so essentially, the Chinese container ship was stranded on the sea, on the open sea, because it was not able to to navigate using GPS. It was cut off by command of United States, and they were stranded at sea for over 20 days. U.S. also informed all its allies in the Gulf region, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, etc., Kuwait, do not take in the Chinese container ship, right? So after 20 days, more than 20 days standoff, finally, China was forced to accept a inspection by U.S. So U.S. the Chinese ship docked in Saudi Arabia. U.S. officials, Saudi Arabia officials, they boarded the ship, and they found nothing. They did not find any trace of chemical weapons like they claim. So, and United States blamed China for it, because they say this is a Chinese sting operation to humiliate the CIA. It's the projection and gaslighting was off the chart from the U.S. The U.S. never apologized. They refused to pay compensation to the Chinese crew and the Chinese shipping company. But this was a big wake up call to the Chinese leadership. They realized they cannot depend on United States in a pinch. And this is when China embarked on its own their own answer to the GPS system. They call it BeiDou. And by now, BeiDou has enough satellites to cover the surface of the Earth. And this is BeiDou system. They also function as to also provide satellite intelligence. This is very important in the modern warfare, and this is why Iran had chose to join BeiDou. Again, Iran had to kind of gave up their long-held position of going alone in developing their defense capability to to work with China, because China has demonstrated by their non-interference foreign policy that they can be relied upon. Unlike United States, U.S. will always use this kind of weapon sale as leverage to influence the other nations' foreign policy, or sometimes even domestic policy. Just like how U.S. made Pakistan to sign a end user agreement when U.S. sold F-16. Say you cannot use those F-16 in a fight against India. Well, then what's the point of buying those F-16s? So anyway, so whereas China, when China makes weapon sale, there's no strings attached. So this is another attractive feature.
I want to slip in a question
Go
here.
ahead.
Yeah. So if you take the J10Cs and put it back in the previous picture during what was happening between Iran and Israel, what changes would you see? What would happen? First of all, there wouldn't be such magnanimous air superiority. We got that one. But how would it change things for Israel?
Well, okay, Israel has, they have Israel have F-16 and F-35. F-16, F-16 is still the workhorse of the Israeli Air Force, and J-10C will be the effective answer to the Israeli F-16. Like if Iran acquire large enough number of J-10Cs, let's say like 100 aircraft, Israel F-16s would not be able to roam the sky of Western Iran. That will not happen. And for F-35, eventually Iran may have to acquire J-35 to effectively answer that. But J-35 just entered production. Like Pakistan even had its hands on it yet. So like I said, Iran is probably not going to get J-35 before Pakistan gets them. And it really kind of depends on how quickly China can ramp up production of that new aircraft. So it's too early to speculate how soon they can get their hands on J-35, but J-10C, China has plenty of stock of J-10C. They can be very quickly provided, and that's something what Iran needs right now. They need something, they need a very quick fix. Like right now, there's a big gap in their air defense and their air force. This is so J-10C will be kind of effectively provide a effective answer to Israeli F-16, and you'll be ironic because the J-10C program started back in early 1980s in China, but after they started J-10C program, Chinese aviation expert actually used they used as reference Israeli Lavi fighter program. This Lavi fighter was Israel's own indigenous fighter program that was based on F-16, and but after a while, United States like, okay, why are you making your own planes? You should buy our F-16s. So Lavi program got canned, but Israel already poured all this resources into Lavi, so they want to get some return out of their investment, and that's when they sold their plan, their designs to China. So when China designed J10C, the J10C program was already in place before this whole Lavi program got canceled. But midway, they were able to get their hands on the design document for the Israeli Lavi fighter, so they use it for reference for the J10s back in the 1980s. Right, so it was kind of ironic, kind of like this is coming back now. Now, if Iran does acquire J-10C, to counter the Israeli F-16, and you wrong. One thing about this is Iran really made this is actually a big adjustment for Iran. Iran went from, okay, we're going to go completely on our own, developing our own indigenous capability, to realize, look, we're going to need outside help to plug this gap, to like move our air force and air defense into the 21st century. And this is why people before were saying, why didn't China and Russia step in to help Iran earlier? Well, this is because before, Iran was still pursuing the strategy of indigenous production. They weren't ready, because for them, they see it's kind of giving up on their sovereignty and independence. They have to depend on foreign help into the weapon system. But now what has happened as a result of the 12-day conflict is Iran now will be further integrated with Russia and China weapon systems. So the weapon sales, not just weapon sales, not just like money exchanging for planes, because it's actually building up a relationship. Just like what we saw with China and Pakistan cooperation. When you sell weapons, you have to send your pilots for training. You have to send your ground crew for training to operate the radars. Like J10C sale is not going to be just for J10C. It's gonna include a radar system, integration of the J10C, and data link possibly with J10C and the Chinese BeiDou system to get the satellite intelligence. And again, if they want to do the Pakistan route, they're going to have to get the whole package. They're going to have to get the AWACS plane as well. That's what Pakistan did. Pakistan went Chinese the whole way. AWACS, Pakistan has signed deals for acquiring AWACS planes, J-10C fighters, possibly J-35 in the future, but also radars, Chinese air defense system, the Hongqi HQ air defense system, the whole 9 yards. And that's probably what looking increasingly likely for Iran as well. Not just J10C, but they're probably going to also acquire. They're either going to fast track their delivery of Russian S-300, S-400, but they could also be acquiring the Chinese Hongqi air defense system as well, and they will be all integrated. They will all have like data links, so they can talk to each other. All these pieces of hardware will be able to talk to each other, and this is a big step. That means Iranian pilots will be sent to China for training. There will be Iranian ground crew go to China to learn how to maintain those aircraft. That will be Chinese engineers coming to Iran to help service those aircrafts. So this is a multi-generational relationship building, just like what had happened between Pakistan and China. You can look at that as a model. So this means now the BRICS grouping, especially the grouping among Russia, China, and
India.
Iran will be now further. The integration will be even tighter than before. Before it was kind of loose grouping of the countries who come here, for talking about economic cooperation, right? Oh, Iran, by the way, is also a member of SCO,
Yeah.
Shanghai Cooperation Organization, right? So that's there's already a forum for the defense ministers of each country to come together and talk shop. But now it's going to be a tighter integration. There will be a lot of personnel exchanges and a lot of training taking place. One thing we saw with Pakistan's acquired J10C from China is that Pakistan and China, they held joint exercises. Pakistan Air Force and Chinese Air Force held joint exercises to figure out how to effectively leverage J10C. I saw the Pakistan China joint exercise in 2023. You could see the J10C were taking off, but you also see the AWACS plane taking off in the background. So they were already working on that system integration, which they just happened to put into effective use when they went against India. So all these will take place between China and Iran as well.
So I've got a quick question related to GPS systems. The BeiDou and the American GPS system. How many countries use the American system and how many countries use the Chinese system?
Well, before the birth of the Chinese BeiDou system, I mean, basically
Yeah.
everybody had to rely on the GPS because that's the only game in town, right? But now with the BeiDou system, GPS have a real real competitor, and the with the experience with Pakistan and now India, is that more and more countries are going to wake up and to realize maybe they cannot rely on the United States. Maybe they cannot rely on the GPS. And this is where China has there's a real value proposition in switching over to the BeiDou system. Because China has a very drastically different foreign policy approach than the United States. For China's the cardinal rule of their foreign policy is non-interference. They're not gonna sell you the system and then tell you how to use it and then tell you how not to use it and tell you to do their bidding essentially, right? Because United States just want everybody to bend their knee, and then use American system as well. For China, it's that's not part of the consideration. So it makes the Chinese system even more attractive.
Okay. So now let's jump towards the IAEA story. Iran has disassociated itself from the IAEA. And the allegation that Iran is putting on the IAEA is horrendous. They're saying that the information on their nuclear scientists were given to the Mossad by the IAEA. That is destruction. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I mean, IAEA basically handed off the entire list and the location of Iranian nuclear scientists to Israel. That led to their assassination by Israel, right? I mean, that's unacceptable. This is kind of the you are basically working with a snake. You know, the obvious choice to do is cut off the snake. You know, you don't deal with people like that. Especially at the time when we saw a lot of infiltration by Mossad into Iran. They were um, this is IAEA just one of the vectors that Israel leveraged to gain information inside Iran's defense capabilities. So I mean, obvious thing to do is to cut off IAEA. You know, why would you continue to work with them if they're literally working with your enemy? Um, and I think that's just the right thing to do, and nobody can blame them for that. You know, given what happened, this is not Iran unprovokedly kicking off IAEA. This is because IAEA actively sabotaged Iran. So on the other hand, it gave the Iran also do if they do decide to pursue their nuclear program, they would not want to have IAEA to continually feed that information to Israel and United States so they can carry out more strikes. And we don't know what Iran is gonna do, but the Israeli attack really kind of bolstered the argument for Iran to pursue a full nuclear program, and then given that, there's no point to have IAEA in the country.
But that also, what about the rest of the countries? Rest of the countries might show distrust in the IAEA. This is dangerous. The IAEA would have the most important information about most of the countries with them, and if they're giving that important information out to the Mossad, that would be a danger call for everyone. How would this make other countries feel?
Well, I mean, we saw what happened even back during the Iraq War. I mean, IAEA basically provided the cover, the political cover for United States to claim that they went inside Iraq in order to dismantle Iraq's WMD program, right? I mean, so now this time they just went even a step further by actually providing the assassination target list to Israel. It's really a stain on the reputation of IAEA. It's why would anybody in Iran's shoes in the future to allow IAEA inspections? You know, if they can just they face high possibility of sabotage. It's not good for nuclear non-proliferation if that's your goal, right? I mean, like that's because what really has shown the Israeli attack is, um, you got to nuke up. You got if Iran actually have nukes, Israel would have to think twice before carrying out this kind of attack. I mean, you have Israeli defense officials recently giving interviews claiming that, oh, we did to Iran equivalent of 9/11 and Pearl Harbor. I'm like, what? Did you just compare your? Wait, do you know what you're saying? You're claiming credit like Pearl Harbor and 9/11 is a good thing. And anyway, so Israel probably at this point they don't really care how outside world perceive them anymore because they know they got United States on the hook. So for Iran, the rational thing to do right now is to continue to pursue their nuclear program, maybe covertly, maybe not outright announce it to the world, but they gonna have strong reservation to continue to work with IAEA. I mean, like so far it hasn't yielded anything for Iran. Originally, Iran tried to use a nuclear deal as a bargain chip they kind of dangle out the prospect. Okay, they will completely give up their nuclear program in exchange for the West, particularly United States and EU, to lift their sanctions. Well, the sanction hasn't been lifted. And you have a case where Iran actually signs the deal, and then Donald Trump, in his first term, tore up the deal. And how can you trust? How can you deal with people like that? And this is Donald Trump. Donald Trump, not only he tore up the first Iran deal, he in his first term he signed the U.S. Mexico Canada trade agreement in his first term, and then in his second term he tore up the agreement he himself signed the first term. How can you trust people like that? How can you make a deal with people like that? So Iran is going to have to develop its own defense capability. First, they need to buff up their air force and air defense, right? With that guarantee of their sovereignty, then they have the option, if they do choose to pursue a full nuclear agenda.
So, okay, real quickly, what do you have to say about Donald Trump being nominated as for the Global Peace Prize Award? What does the Peace Prize Award mean to you guys, and for us, for the rest of the world?
Well, okay, first, people need to realize the Nobel Peace Prize is not the same as Nobel Prize, right? Nobel Prize was established originally for scientists or people who made contribution to science, etc. And Nobel Peace Prize was established after Nobel has died, and it has always been a political decision. Look at the people who have received Nobel Peace Prize in the past. Obama, that's an American president who received a Nobel Prize before he even started working, before he even became the U.S. president, he got a Nobel Peace Prize just simply because people were celebrating he's not George W. Bush. Like finally there was somebody other than George W. Bush in the office of the U.S. presidency. He got a Nobel Peace Prize for that. This tells you it's a big joke. And guess what? During the whole Israel-Iran conflict, which U.S. was fully complicit, and U.S. had fully supported Israel, the former Nobel Peace Prize winner Obama said nothing. Zip. I mean, this is a case where it's a war that's immensely unpopular with American people. If the democratic establishment in U.S., if they decide to make that issue, they could very easily to weaponize the issue against Trump, but yet they decide not to. They decide to say nothing because you know why? Because all the Democratic Party machine, they depended on the same financial backers who wants United States to support Israel. That's a real reason. This is a real reason. Majority of the U.S. politicians are all like hardcore Zionists, because that's their money depending on it, their money source depending on it. So yeah. Anyway, we're digressing, but Nobel Peace Prize is a joke. I mean, I heard they're thinking about withdrawing his nomination, but anyway, I think they should give Trump the Nobel Peace Prize, because you will really show the world what a big joke this Nobel Peace Prize is.